She bought a first-class seat with her twin brother, just like everyone else. But 10 minutes after takeoff, a flight attendant asked them to move. Why? Because they didn't look the part. What happens when quiet dignity meets blatant discrimination? At 35,000 feet in the air, Mia and Lennox Taylor, 17-year-old honor students and the children of a retired educator fighting cancer, thought they were just going home. But when their presence in row 2A and 2B sparked discomfort among the wrong crew members, what followed wasn't just about a seat, it was about who gets to belong and who gets believed. Why was Mia's voice so calm when she asked, "Would you have said that if we weren't black?" What happened after her brother made one phone call that changed the entire flight crew's fate, and who was secretly recording everything from row 8. This isn't just a story about race or airlines. It's a story about grace under pressure, quiet power, and the courage to ask the right question even when your voice shakes. Ready to find out what happened in the sky that day? Tap like, share this story, and subscribe to our channel now. Let's begin. There was a quiet kind of stillness in the cabin of Altura Flight 917. The overhead lights had dimmed to a soft amber glow. Warm towels had been passed around. The hum of the engines was steady, constant, almost meditative. Flight attendants moved with quiet grace, weaving between luxury pods with practiced ease, offering flutes of champagne and linen-covered trays. From the outside, the cabin of row 1 looked like serenity itself. But inside seats 1A and 1B, tension was slowly beginning to gather. Ariel Bennett shifted slightly in her seat. The cool leather adjusted with her. She wasn't nervous, not exactly, but her eyes flicked toward the front of the cabin more often than necessary. She could feel it, that prickle, the weight of being watched. Not by everyone, just one passenger, one glance, one stare that lingered longer than it should have. She adjusted her sweater sleeve, hiding the edge of the tattoo on her wrist. It wasn't anything dramatic, just 3 dots. A code she and her twin sister Amara had created back in college. It meant, "We do not move for storms. We are the storm." Amara didn't notice the gaze, or maybe she didn't care. She was too busy writing on her tablet, making last-minute adjustments to their presentation slides. The World Tech Horizon Conference in Geneva was no small deal. They weren't just attending, they were headlining, the two of them, black, female. 26 co-founders of Pennywise Technologies, a fintech app designed to build generational wealth in underserved communities. First class was never about luxury for them. It was about space. Space to think. Space to prepare. Space to belong. They had booked these exact seats 6 months in advance, used company travel points, verified every detail twice. It wasn't a reward. It was a tool, a place to breathe, above the clouds. "You okay?" Amara asked softly, not looking up. Ariel blinked. "Yeah, just taking it in." Her sister smiled, that familiar half-smirk that always made Ariel feel steadier. "It's happening," Amara said, glancing up from her screen. "Tomorrow we walk into a room full of investors and execs who didn't even let us pitch 3 years ago. And now they paid to hear us speak." Ariel smiled but didn't respond. She was proud, so proud, but she had also learned to measure joy against its backdrop. Success came with shadows. Even here, at 30,000 feet, in the rows of champagne and warm almonds, the air could still shift, and it did. When Evelyn Prescott boarded, she did not look like trouble. Elegant, That's the word most people would use. Blonde hair perfectly pinned, silk scarf knotted just so. A beige cashmere coat that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her lipstick was flawless. Her heels pointed like punctuation marks. She didn't carry her own bag. A flight attendant did it for her. She walked through the aisle as if the carpet had been rolled out for her. Then she paused, just for a second, right at row 1. Ariel caught the hesitation, that slight narrowing of the eyes, the frozen smile. She knew that look. She had seen it in elevators, boardrooms, conferences, that look that said, "You're not where I expected you to be." Evelyn moved on, sat in row 2C, but the stare had been planted like a seed. Amara raised an eyebrow. Did she just scan us? Ariel exhaled slowly. Let it go. They both knew what it was, but they also knew better than to let it pull focus. They turned back to their screens, sipped their water, adjusted their headrests. The flight took off with a quiet rumble. The city lights of New York disappeared below. The sky turned navy. A soft chime. Seatbelt signs off. Flight attendants moved again, more relaxed now. The service began in earnest. Ariel declined the wine, opting for ginger tea. Amara ordered the grilled sea bass and began talking about the slide on micro-investment APIs. But just as Ariel started to respond, a shadow loomed over them. "Excuse me." The voice was sweet, too sweet, like syrup masking bitterness. Ariel looked up. Evelyn Prescott was standing there, hands clasped in front of her, smiling as if she were asking for directions, but her tone was too smooth, too rehearsed. "Would you two mind terribly switching seats?" Amara blinked. "I'm sorry," Evelyn gestured over her shoulder, toward row 2C. "My husband's just back there. We were booked last minute and ended up separated. I'd be so grateful if you'd let us take these. I'm sure the airline can offer you some credits or something." Ariel's heart sank. She had known. From the moment Evelyn paused at their row, she had known this was coming. But knowing didn't dull the sting. "We prefer to keep our assigned seats," Ariel said politely. Amara added, "We booked them a while ago, for a reason." Evelyn's smile tightened. "Oh, of course," she said. "It's just, my husband has anxiety. Flying really stresses him out, and I've been a Platinum Elite member for over a decade. I'm sure the airline would understand." Amara didn't flinch, so would ours. That made Evelyn blink. "I'm sorry," Ariel's voice remained even, steady. "We're Platinum members too, and again, we'd prefer to stay here." For a second, Evelyn looked as though someone had spoken to her in a foreign language. Then she nodded, lips still tight. "Well, that's disappointing." She turned and walked away, but not far. She returned to her seat, whispered to a flight attendant. The young man nodded, glancing toward row 1. Then he walked away. Ariel felt the chill return, like turbulence, but colder. Amara leaned closer. "She's not done." "No," Ariel murmured. "She never even started." The piece they had carved in row 1 had shifted. The storm hadn't come yet, but it was boarding. The tension didn't break. It lingered like a bad aftertaste, thick in the recycled air. Ariel leaned back in her seat, trying to ground herself with breath. She counted the soft flickers of the ceiling lights. She tried to focus on the sound of the beverage cart clinking gently in the galley behind them. But Evelyn Prescott had left more than a conversation. She had started something. Amara. ever the mirror of fire to Ariel's water, was already shifting in her seat, restless. "We paid for this, reserved it 6 months out," she said under her breath. She strolls in late with cashmere and entitlement and thinks she's owed a swap. Ariel didn't answer. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Always had been. The flight attendant returned. He was young, early 30s maybe, tall, nervous energy, the kind of polished nice that wasn't yet backed by experience. His name tag read Lance in sharp block letters. "Excuse me, ladies," he said, voice coated in honey. "Sorry to bother you again." Ariel gave a polite nod. "Yes, we've had a small seating mix-up. One of our frequent flyers, Ms. Prescott, was hoping to switch seats to sit beside her husband. They're experiencing a bit of discomfort with separation anxiety." "We understand," Amara said, calm but direct. "But we booked these seats early for a reason. We'll be staying here." Lance hesitated. "It would really help us out. Just a small adjustment. You'd still be in first class. Row 2 is identical in service, but not in positioning," Ariel said gently. "We chose this row because I get claustrophobic when I can't see the cabin door. It's a medical note, on file." That wasn't a lie. Exactly. Ariel had logged her preference years ago after a particularly bad red-eye flight left her rattled. It wasn't diagnosed, but it was real. Lance blinked. "I see. I'll check the manifest." He left quickly, the veneer of charm cracking just slightly. Amara looked over. "Good move." Ariel didn't smile. "It's the truth, partial truth," Amara teased. "But hey, tactical empathy. I like it." The sisters sat in silence for a few beats, but the storm outside was gathering speed. A few rows back, Evelyn was whispering again, this time not just to her husband, but to another passenger in 3A, a man in a Navy business suit who looked like he belonged on magazine covers about hedge funds and midlife reinventions. More whispers, more glances. Ariel could feel the temperature of the cabin shifting, not physically, emotionally. It was happening again, that subtle recalibration, the way people began to measure worth without speaking, scan skin before credentials, evaluate presence based on presumption. Ariel reached for her water bottle and sipped slowly, trying to let the ritual center her. That's when her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A text from their assistant back in New York. "Connor, your slides are set for Geneva. Check Slack. PR confirmed panel title. Rewriting Wealth Equity Beyond Algorithms." She exhaled, her hand tightening on the phone. That title, that message, the irony. Rewriting wealth sounded noble on a brochure, but rewriting space. Rewriting who gets to take up space physically, emotionally, economically, that was the battle that didn't wait for a stage. Amara was already opening the Slack link. Connor color-coded the new charts. Genius. Ariel nodded faintly, but her attention was still divided. Her mind had started cataloging the expressions, the shifts, the conversations behind closed cabin curtains. Then it escalated. A second flight attendant arrived, older this time, female. Her name tag read Marjorie, the kind of woman who had seen decades of flight and could spot turbulence in faces as well as clouds. But even Marjorie had a script, and it was being played. "Good evening," she began, her voice warm but clipped. "Ms. Prescott has brought a concern to our attention regarding seat allocation. We want to ensure all passengers are comfortable. Would you mind assisting us by relocating to 2C and 2D? It wasn't phrased like a question. It was a performance of choice. Ariel met Marjorie's gaze. Her own eyes were calm, unwavering. No. We are remaining in our assigned seats. There was a pause, a quiet too loud for first class. Marjorie's lips parted slightly, surprise flickering behind her polished expression. May I ask the reason? Amara leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but undeniable. You may. The reason is that we booked and paid for these seats in advance, as frequent flyers, and as women who are used to being asked to move, we decline. Respectfully, there it was. Ariel watched Marjorie register the answer, not just the words, the force behind them. Marjorie gave a tight nod and stepped back. Understood. And for a moment, Ariel hoped that was it. But Evelyn Prescott wasn't finished. 10 minutes later, the cabin manager arrived. His name was Gerard. He had the bearing of authority, shoulders squared, tablet in hand. He smiled with the serenity of someone who believed in procedures over people. He stood beside their seats, not crouching like Lance had, not softening like Marjorie had. Ms. Bennett. Ms. Bennett, he said with practiced neutrality. I've reviewed the situation and understand your preference to remain in these seats. However, I must inform you that Ms. Prescott has filed a formal complaint citing emotional distress and special medical consideration. What medical documentation does she provide? Ariel asked smoothly. Gerard faltered. I'm not at liberty to share passenger medical records, but you're at liberty to ask us to vacate pre-booked seats, Amara said, tone sharper now. Gerard straightened. We are attempting to de-escalate the situation, and we're not escalating anything. Ariel replied, We haven't raised our voices. We haven't moved. We've simply said no, which we're allowed to say. Gerard looked at them both. The pause was longer this time. I understand. Please be advised that should this continue, we may need to involve ground management upon landing for resolution. Ariel smiled gently. We welcome that. He nodded once, turned, and walked away. Amara looked at her sister. This is insane. No, Ariel said. This is systemic. She opened her laptop slowly, deliberately, clicked into her Zoom account. Then she did something that surprised even Amara. She hit record. The screen blinked to life. Her face framed in soft cabin light. This is Ariel Bennett, she said quietly, co-founder of Pennywise Technologies, currently aboard Altura Flight 917. It is 9:42 p.m. I am documenting this for our records. We are being asked to surrender our reserved seats to accommodate a white passenger who believes her discomfort outweighs our right to exist in first class. Her voice didn't rise, not once, but across the cabin. Row 3 fell still. Amara stared at her, a slow smile spreading across her face. Did you just declare war? Ariel said, I declared witness. The hum of the engines returned. The air grew thick again. The storm was here. But so were they. The cabin lights dimmed further. Somewhere. A child giggled. A cart clinked in the distance. But in row 1, the air had become still again. Still like a brewing storm. Quiet, not from calm, but from the pressure that came before something cracked. Amara shifted in her seat. She was pretending to still read the slides on her tablet. But Ariel knew better. Her sister's lips were taut, the way they always were when she was calculating whether to speak or to wait. Fire disguised as poise, Ariel was grateful for it, because in that moment She did not want to be the one to ignite anything. Not yet. The same flight attendant returned, this time with a strained smile and the kind of tone that made you brace. "Ms. Bennett. Ms. Bennett," he began, addressing both of them with too much familiarity. "I do not mean to disturb you, but the passenger in 2C and her husband have requested to switch with your seats. They're well, they are longtime elite members with us, and we would be happy to offer you upgraded miles or travel vouchers in return for your cooperation." Amara looked up first. "We already declined." "Yes," Ariel said calmly, "and we made it clear we prefer to remain here. This isn't a matter of cooperation. It is a matter of our confirmed and paid reservations." The attendant paused. His eyes darted briefly to his left. Evelyn was watching. Still seated, but watching. "I understand," he said. "But we try to keep our top-tier flyers satisfied. I'm sure you understand how delicate some of these arrangements can be. That word, delicate." Ariel sat back, spine straight against the seat. She did not speak right away. She wanted to say so many things, about how delicacy was a luxury often not afforded to people who looked like her, about how black travelers always had to walk the tightrope of being grateful but never defiant, about how many times she had been told she was too assertive for pointing out the obvious, but instead she just looked at his name tag. "Connor," she said softly, "this is not about delicacy. We made no disruption. We boarded peacefully. We are minding our own business, and we do not owe anyone our seats, even for miles." Connor's lips twitched. He opened his mouth, then closed it. A few seconds later, he nodded and walked away. Amara exhaled slowly. "We are not doing this," she whispered. "No," Ariel said, "but it looks like they are." A soft buzz made them both pause. Ariel reached into her bag and pulled out her work phone. A notification blinked. One missed call from the Pennywise HQ secure line, then another, then a text. "Please call back ASAP, urgent. It's about your itinerary." Ariel's stomach dropped. She glanced at Amara, then quietly dialed back, holding the phone close to her face. The line picked up on the first ring. "Ariel." "It's Sarah from Ops." Her voice was breathless. "I'm so sorry to call you mid-flight, but something weird just happened." Ariel straightened in her seat. "What kind of weird?" "We just got an internal notification from Altura Airlines. They're saying that there was a seating conflict on your flight and that our travelers were flagged for voluntary seat reassignment. And now, it looks like your access privileges for our airport lounge and travel status just got downgraded in their system." Ariel blinked. "What?" Amara leaned in. "Put it on speaker." Ariel did. "Repeat that," Amara said firmly. Sarah's voice now came through for both of them. "They flagged you both as disruptive in the system. It automatically triggers a downgrade unless someone manually overrides it. I'm working on getting it reversed, but I needed you to know because, well, it looks like someone is actively messing with your status on their back end. I don't know who authorized it." Ariel felt her heart pounding. Amara was already pulling out her laptop. "Get the internal logs," she said. "We're not letting this slide." "I've already started," Sarah replied, "and I'm forwarding everything to our legal advisor." Ariel nodded, even though Sarah could not see her. "Thank you," she said softly. She hung up and looked down the aisle again. This time, Evelyn was not even pretending to hide it. She was smiling. Ariel sat still. For a long moment, she did not speak. Neither did Amara. The hum of the engine surrounded them like static, white noise that could not drown out the truth. This was not about a seat. It was about power. It was about the idea that someone could decide you were unworthy of the space you occupied, and that the system would quietly agree unless you screamed loud enough. But Ariel had learned something long ago. Not all storms scream. Some gather in silence. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second device. This one was not connected to any public network. It was their direct uplink to an internal protocol built just months ago after a separate but similar incident involving bias in algorithmic hotel bookings. They called it Project Virgo. It was not just a tracker. It was a live, time-stamped, encrypted documentation system that could record every incident in real time, triangulate it against other complaints in the system, and begin to generate heat maps for systemic patterns. Amara looked over. "You're activating Virgo." Ariel nodded. "Yes, and I'm logging everything. Right now." They began to type names, times, dialogue, the initial request, the second approach, the attempted seat reassignment, the call from Sarah, the back-end downgrade. They input every detail into the secure log. By the time they were done, the system had flagged Evelyn Prescott's name in its preliminary cross-check. 2 prior incidents at Altura lounges, one involving a black couple with a child, one involving a Latina executive traveling alone. Neither had gone viral. Both had ended in quiet apologies, and both had been buried. But this time, something was different. This time, the twins were not alone. Sarah had already looped in one of their legal partners at the Justice Link, a nonprofit that worked with major firms to challenge corporate discrimination through digital transparency. And this flight, it had live onboard Wi-Fi. Within seconds, Ariel uploaded a redacted, encrypted summary log with no identifying images or video, just a time-stamped breakdown of what had occurred so far. The system flagged it for review. But Amara had already drafted a secondary release, a failsafe. If anything else happened on the flight, the release would go public to a list of 42 pre-approved journalists, legal advisors, and digital watchdog partners. Amara looked at her sister and nodded. "Line in the sky." Ariel smiled faintly. "Let's see who crosses it." Down the aisle. Evelyn pressed the call button again, and the cabin lights flickered back on. The cabin settled into that strange twilight of mid-flight. Meals were being served quietly. The overhead lights had dimmed just enough to cast soft halos around reading lamps and tray tables. But in row 1, tension pressed against the plush seats like humidity before a storm. Amara tapped the trackpad of her laptop again. The internal logs from Project Virgo were updating live, syncing silently through a secure VPN. On the screen, a familiar interface began populating with incident data. Ariel leaned in closer, scanning the cross-reference complaints connected to the name Evelyn Prescott. 3 incidents now, not 2. The third had been filed by an anonymous flight attendant 2 years ago, not a passenger. The file was short but specific. It described a pattern of microaggressive behavior by Evelyn toward cabin crew of color. There was mention of a forced demotion on the return flight from Lisbon. The file ended with a note, "No action taken. Personnel transferred." Ariel sat back slowly. Her fingers clenched briefly before she relaxed them. It was never just about seats. It was always about patterns. She closed the file. "We're not alone on this flight," she murmured. Amara glanced at her. "You mean Sarah's watching no?" Ariel replied, "I mean, people like us. People who've been in this exact moment and swallowed it just to get to their destination." Amara's jaw tensed. She looked out the window, the curve of the earth just barely visible in the fading sky. "Sometimes I wonder," she said quietly, "how many of us are flying wounded and no one knows?" Ariel reached over, her hand resting briefly over her sister's. "Then maybe we name it this time," she said. A few rows behind them, a passenger unbuckled and walked forward. She was a woman in her late 50s, brown-skinned, hair graying at the temples. She paused near their seats, nodded slightly, then leaned toward them just enough where only they could hear. "Been watching," she whispered. "Y'all are not wrong. Just wanted to say thank you." Then she walked away. It was just a moment, but in that moment, something shifted. Amara exhaled slowly, her hand back on the laptop. "Okay," she said. "Let's update the log." Ariel nodded and opened the comm link with Sarah. Sarah picked up immediately. Her voice was a whisper, but urgent. "I've just looped in Counsel Avery from Justice Link. She's seen the footage from the boarding cam. Apparently." Evelyn spoke to Connor before she even sat down. Requested corrective seating was the term. Ariel blinked. Corrective seating. That's what the system flagged. It's a euphemism some reps use. It's meant to mean rearranging seating for operational balance. But it's not standard language. Counsel Avery says it's often used as code, especially when paired with notes like escalating demeanor or uncooperative passenger, which are now being added to your passenger file in real time. Amara narrowed her eyes. "They're trying to lay groundwork for retaliation," Sarah replied. "We think so. Avery's preparing a preemptive notice of civil rights violation and digital manipulation. If this escalates further, we push." "What about internal allies?" Ariel asked. "I'm pinging Maxwell." Sarah said, "He's on the board of Altura, and he's the one who helped draft the company's inclusive travel manifesto 2 years ago. He'll want to know his own policies are being violated." Ariel clicked her tongue softly. That manifesto was a public stunt. "Maybe," Sarah said, "but public stunts still come with public fallout." Amara leaned back and folded her arms. "We're in a sealed aircraft, thousands of feet up, and somehow this feels like a courtroom." Ariel smiled faintly. "It is, and the verdict's still forming." Connor returned once more. His face was taut, lips pressed thin. This time, he crouched slightly to speak eye level with them. "I've been asked to document this interaction," he said. "Would you like to provide an official statement about your refusal to switch seats?" Ariel did not answer immediately. She glanced at Amara. Amara looked back at her, and there was no fear in her eyes. Just steel. Ariel turned to Connor. "Yes," she said, "I do." She opened her phone and hit record. "My name is Ariel Bennett. I'm occupying my legally purchased seat in row 1 of Altura Flight 2390. I have been approached multiple times by crew with requests to vacate this seat for another passenger's comfort. I have declined respectfully each time. I am documenting this because I have reason to believe that the systems used by this airline are being manipulated in real time to flag me and my sister Amara Bennett, who also holds a valid seat in row 1, as disruptive without cause." She paused. "I state clearly that we are not disruptive. We are passengers, and we are watching." Connor's face went pale. She stopped the recording. "Would you like to make a statement for the log as well?" She asked him. He stammered. I need to speak with the captain." "You do that," Amara said quietly. He stood up and left. Within minutes, a ripple passed through the cabin. Passengers stirred. Several were whispering now, phones discreetly out. The energy had changed. In the cockpit, Captain Rourke had received the report. He had also just received a ping from Maxwell Stanton, the board member Sarah mentioned. Maxwell's message was short. "If you do not get ahead of this, we will be behind it. Entirely." Rourke leaned back in his seat. The digital logs were already open. He scrolled through the timeline, boarding, interaction logs, Connor's notes. The discrepancy stood out instantly. The words corrective seating never should have been used, not without a clear operational need, and there was none. 2 fully qualified passengers, paid tickets, no complaints from nearby passengers, and now an official civil rights attorney was involved. Rourke tapped the comm. "Get me Connor. Now." Back in the cabin, Evelyn Prescott looked around. She was beginning to sense something had slipped beyond her reach. Her husband shifted uncomfortably in his seat beside her. "Do you think they're recording this?" he whispered. She did not answer. Connor came back. Not alone. Captain Rourke followed him down the aisle. Calm but direct. He stopped at row 1. "Ms. Bennett, Ms. Bennett," he said, looking at both sisters. "I am the captain of this flight. I have reviewed the logs. I want to extend my apologies for the discomfort caused. Your seats are secure. There will be no further interruptions." He paused. "And your statements have been received." Ariel met his eyes. "Thank you," she said. He nodded and left. Connor stayed frozen for a beat before turning toward Evelyn's row. Then, unexpectedly, he crouched again. "Ms. Prescott," he said. She looked up sharply. "You and your husband will be moved to row 9, Standard Economy Plus, Captain's orders." Her face reddened instantly. "You're moving us back." "Yes," he said, quieter now. "We've been informed there is a compliance investigation underway. We're instructed to maintain minimal contact." She opened her mouth, then closed it. In row 1. Amara and Ariel sat silently as the whispers turned louder. Phones now were no longer hidden. Some passengers applauded softly. Some were just stunned. Amara looked over at her sister. "Did we just—" When Ariel's eyes stayed on the aisle where Evelyn had just disappeared, dignity trailing behind her like perfume lost in a breeze. "No," she said gently. "We just cleared the runway." Ariel blinked, her vision swimming slightly as the cabin lights dimmed and the flight attendants began their quiet sweep of the aisles. It had been hours since the confrontation with Evelyn Prescott, and yet the silence now felt louder than the noise. Captain Halverson had not yet made a public address. Linda Marks had been conspicuously absent. And Evelyn, who had returned to her seat after her humiliating exchange, had kept her eyes fixed on the in-flight magazine for the past 90 minutes, turning a single page every 5 minutes like clockwork. Amara, sitting beside her sister, exhaled slowly. She had barely spoken since the call with their father. Her fingers rested on her lap, calm on the surface. But Ariel noticed the tremor in her thumb. She always noticed the tremor. "You okay?" Ariel whispered, turning slightly. Amara didn't look at her. "I hate that we always have to prove we deserve to be here." Ariel's heart clenched. It wasn't the first time Amara had said something like this. But tonight, it landed differently. The seat they sat in cost nearly 5 figures. They had built Pennywise from scratch, run it through sleepless nights, made it profitable, and finally scalable. And yet, all it took was one woman in pearls to make them feel like trespassers. "I know," Ariel said gently, "but this isn't about us. Not really. She was always going to see us as furniture, background. No." Amara's voice was low but sharp. "This is about us. About every time someone looks at us and assumes we're assistants, interns, someone's guest. I'm tired of being mistaken for less." Ariel let the words linger. They weren't just speaking for themselves. They were speaking for every black professional woman who had been forced to carry both grace and proof of competence like a dual burden. She had spent years learning to stay composed in boardrooms where she was talked over. Amara had chosen fire instead of frost, and they had both built walls of steel in different shapes. Across the aisle, a flight attendant approached Evelyn with a small silver tray. "Ms. Prescott, would you like another glass of your Sauvignon Blanc?" Evelyn's lips curled into something close to a smile. Finally, some basic service. Took long enough. Ariel and Amara didn't flinch, but they heard it, and they weren't alone. The woman seated 3 rows ahead, an elderly Indian-American surgeon returning from a humanitarian mission, glanced back with the faintest scowl. A middle-aged white man in row 3, wearing an MIT alumni jacket, exchanged a look with his teenage daughter, who had been watching TikTok videos until a few minutes ago. Something had shifted. The air felt different. Amara leaned in, keeping her voice calm. "You know what's crazy this morning? We were excited, giddy, even. First time attending World Tech Horizon as presenters, not just attendees. And now we're surviving the flight to even get there," Ariel said. The silence wrapped around them again, but it wasn't oppressive this time. It was full of invisible tension. The cabin had absorbed what happened earlier, and while no one had spoken openly yet, Ariel could feel it settling like sediment. A notification chimed from Ariel's phone. She opened it instinctively. An anonymous tip just came through the Pennywise contact form. Subject line, "Altura Skies needs to see this." Inside was a blurry photo of Evelyn pointing at the twins earlier, her face frozen mid-rant. A second photo was attached. It showed Linda Marks with her arm outstretched, physically attempting to block Amara's entrance to the cabin. "Someone recorded us." Ariel turned the screen toward Amara. "You think they're helping us or trying to start something?" Amara asked. "Does it matter?" Ariel replied. "If this spreads, there's a record, another notification, then another, by the third ping." Ariel turned off airplane mode. The texts came in rapid succession. From their father, "Just spoke to Robert Kincaid at Altura. Sit tight." From their publicist, a journalist from JetBlue, "Truth reached out. Claims a source on Flight 917 says there was a racial profiling incident." From their CTO, "Should we prep a statement?" Ariel's heart raced. The story was going public. She glanced over at Evelyn, who was oblivious, sipping her wine. Amara's eyes lit up. "Let it burn." "Not yet," Ariel said quietly. "Let's not fan the flame until we know which way the wind's blowing." The lights dimmed further. A voice crackled over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Halverson. We'll be beginning our initial descent into Geneva shortly. Local time is 6:42 a.m. The twins barely noticed, because just then, Linda Marks reappeared at the front of the cabin. She cleared her throat. "Miss Bennett, Miss Bennett." Ariel looked up, startled. "Yes, could you step into the galley for a moment? Both of us," Amara asked. Linda hesitated. "Yes." The twins rose. A few passengers turned to watch. In the galley, Linda's hands were clasped tightly in front of her. Her voice was formal. "Ladies, I need to inform you that earlier tonight, a complaint was filed by Ms. Prescott against you, alleging disorderly conduct and harassment of another passenger." Amara laughed. A single sharp note. Ariel kept her voice even. "And how exactly did we harass her?" Linda's tone did not soften. "Ms. Prescott claims she felt unsafe when you began recording and raised your voice." "We never raised our voice," Ariel said, "and we weren't the ones recording." Then she took a risk. "Do you know who we are?" "Ms. Marks." Linda blinked. "I know you're passengers. We're also co-founders of one of the largest black-led fintech startups on the East Coast. Our father sits on the board of your parent company's investment division, and 3 media outlets already have footage of what happened." Linda froze. "Evelyn's complaint is noted. Ours is documented. Let's see how Altura's legal team wants to balance that equation." Amara stepped closer, voice low and certain. "We are not the ones you should be afraid of losing your job over." Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. "We'll return to our seats now," Ariel said, and gently guided her sister back to 3A and 3B. Back in their seats, the girls remained silent. But beneath the quiet was a storm, and on the screens of a dozen passengers across Flight 9117, a blurry video had already been shared to a private WhatsApp group titled Elite Passengers, Real Stories. It would leak in 12 minutes, and nothing would be the same. For a moment, the aircraft seemed to hold its breath. The ambient hum of the engines softened beneath the sudden silence between the sisters. Ariel sat completely still, her hands clenched tightly together on her lap. Her breath moved shallowly in her chest. Across from her, Evelyn Prescott had just begun her champagne, no doubt assuming she had won something, but Amara was not built to remain silent. She leaned in, her voice measured but brimming with controlled fire. "Do you really think a seat proves who you are?" she asked, her eyes holding Evelyn's for a beat longer than comfortable. "Or did someone teach you that early on?" Evelyn blinked once, perhaps surprised the girl had spoken at all. "Young lady, I was merely trying to make this flight more comfortable for everyone. There's no need to be dramatic." That was when Captain Halverson's voice returned over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain again. Due to light turbulence ahead, we'll be dimming the cabin lights momentarily. Please ensure your seat belts remain fastened. And thank you again for choosing Altura Skies." A soft chime followed. Overhead, the lights dimmed into an amber glow. The cabin took on the feel of a quiet theater moments before the curtain rose. Except, here, the performance was real and unscripted. Ariel reached into her satchel and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, unlocking it and pulling up a shared document titled Pennywise Final Pitch Deck. As her thumb hovered over the screen, she caught her reflection in the black border. A flicker of memory flashed her father telling her once, "Sometimes your voice won't reach the room, but your actions can change the entire floor plan." The noise in her chest started to fade. Instead, something calmer, more purposeful, took its place. She looked at Amara, who was still tense, her arms folded like shields. "Hey," Ariel whispered. "We don't need the seat." Amara shot her a look, Of course we don't. That's not the point. I know. Ariel leaned in, but the pitch is in 48 hours. Our last investor backed out. We need altitude, not ego. Let her have the window. Amara's jaw tightened. Are you saying we let her walk over us? No. I'm saying we let her walk where she wants, while we fly above her for a moment. Amara didn't speak. Then slowly, a reluctant smile pulled at one side of her mouth. You're still a poet, even when you're mad, only when it counts. Just then, Eric Geller passed their aisle. He was pushing a cart slowly, checking belts and offering midnight tea. Everything all right, ladies? He asked, with a tired but gentle smile. We're good, Ariel said. Amara held Eric's gaze for a second longer. But if anyone spills tea on us again, I'll charge them for dry cleaning. Eric chuckled softly. Fair enough. The cart continued its quiet path, wheels humming softly. Ariel looked down at her phone again. She opened a new message and began typing. Her fingers flew across the screen with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. To Nathaniel Bennett, subject flight 917. Something's happening, Dad. Evelyn Prescott is on board. There was a situation. I'll explain everything later, but I need to know if you still hold equity in Altura Skies. If you do, can we run a background check on the staff involved in seating arrangements and cross-reference with passenger last names? There's something off, and also, I have a feeling something else is happening. We'll report back. Love, Ari. She hit send, then tucked the phone away. When Amara turned to her again, her voice was quiet but firm. Did you just email Dad? I did. I thought you said we didn't need him on this. We don't. But if his name is already tied to this plane, it gives us leverage. A beat passed. Then Amara smiled again, this time wider. God, I missed scheming with you. You never stopped. They both laughed under their breath, the tension finally cracking. Across the aisle, Evelyn Prescott noticed. Her eyes narrowed. Then she leaned over toward her husband, whispering something that made him glance toward the twins with vague irritation. Linda Marks, the lead attendant, returned down the aisle, holding a tablet. She approached Evelyn's seat with measured steps. Mrs. Prescott, Linda said quietly, may I speak with you privately? Please. Evelyn gave her a surprised look. Why is there an issue? Linda hesitated, then leaned closer and whispered something inaudible. Evelyn's cheeks flushed, her jaw tightening as she stood abruptly. Richard followed, murmuring, what the hell is this about, under his breath. They walked toward the galley, Linda guiding them. As they disappeared behind the curtain, a stillness settled again. Ariel watched the curtain sway, her mind racing. She turned to Amara again. I have a theory. Oh no. Amara groaned teasingly. Another one. Listen. What if this wasn't random? What if Evelyn already knew we'd be on this flight? Amara raised an eyebrow. How would she know that? Because Pennywise just passed security clearance in Switzerland. Our name was leaked to the financial press. What if Prescott and Faulkner had eyes on the startup scene and felt threatened? Amara sat back, thinking. You're suggesting corporate espionage. On a plane, I'm saying rich people don't act out unless they think they're losing something. She knew who we were the moment we boarded, and she's trying to remind us that our seat at the table still comes with conditions. Amara shook her head, exhaling. Wow, I really hate rich people sometimes. Ariel smiled. We're almost rich people. Yeah, but we're the kind who still know how to microwave ramen." They both laughed again, the bond between them thickening like gold drawn over fire. Outside the aircraft window, clouds drifted across the moonlight like soft ghosts, watching silently. Then the curtain drew back. Linda Marks reappeared, her face calm but tight. She approached the twins and crouched slightly to meet their gaze. "Ladies, I'd like to offer an apology on behalf of Altura Skies. There were errors made, in process and in tone. Mr. and Mrs. Prescott will be reassigned to alternate seating for the remainder of the flight." Ariel blinked. "I thank you." Linda nodded. "Your father, Dr. Bennett, was informed. As it turns out, he's still the primary stakeholder in our parent company. He made a few calls." Amara gave a low whistle. "Wow, fast Wi-Fi on this plane." Linda straightened. "I've also been informed by Executive Operations that your startup is to receive a formal invitation to present at our In-Flight Innovation Series next quarter. A public statement will be released upon landing." Evelyn and Richard returned to the cabin. Their expressions betrayed quiet fury. But they said nothing. They walked past the sisters, past row 1, and into row 5 without a word. Ariel looked at Amara. "You okay?" she asked. Amara nodded. "More than okay." They sat back in their seats as the lights dimmed further for the overnight stretch. A serenity settled over them that only came after choosing dignity over defeat. The plane flew forward into the dark sky, and the twin daughters of resistance and brilliance were finally flying with it. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane settled into cruise altitude. Outside, clouds blanketed the Atlantic like layers of cotton, soft and distant. Inside, tension sat thick between the seats. Ariel Bennett sat rigidly in her seat, her spine straight, her breathing shallow. Amara, to her left, had crossed her arms, still fuming. Her face twitched every few seconds as if replaying Evelyn Prescott's condescending tone in her head. The words she'd spoken earlier echoed in the hush. "You should be grateful you're here at all." Linda Marks, the lead flight attendant, passed by without offering the usual warm smile. She busied herself rearranging glasses behind the bar curtain. From the corner of her eye, she kept watch, as if waiting for trouble. No one approached the twins, no one offered comfort. The other passengers glanced occasionally, their curiosity masked by false concern, but they quickly returned to their screens, drinks, and noise-canceling headphones. Ariel gently touched Amara's forearm. "Not here. Not like this," she whispered. Amara's eyes flashed. "So we just let it happen again." "It's not about letting it happen. It's about timing." Ariel replied, "I'd rather dismantle this system with receipts than rage." Amara exhaled hard and turned away. A waiter approached with their dinner trays. Ariel thanked him politely. He didn't respond, just nodded, placed the food, and walked away as if touching hot iron. It was clear now. They weren't passengers. They were a spectacle. They ate in silence for a while. Amara poked at her roasted chicken, never taking a bite. Ariel tried to find peace in the food, in the music playing softly through her AirPods, in the rumble of the engines, but something inside her had fractured. Again. She reached into her bag and pulled out the tablet. There, among her documents, was the proposal she and Amara were flying across the world to present Pennywise Technologies, democratizing wealth, one family at a time. It was filled with charts, projections, ethical models, and impact data, months of work, years, actually, built on pain, on grit, on quiet exclusion from every room that mattered. And now, here they were, in the most elite section of the most elite flight, and still been asked to switch seats like they didn't belong, because someone else felt more entitled to space, because someone else felt their presence disrupted the aesthetic, because someone else believed whiteness came with priority. Ariel clenched her jaw and closed the tablet. She leaned over to Amara. "We're not going to ask for fairness anymore." Amara turned to her, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "We're going to make it policy." Amara blinked, then smiled. "Now that sounds like my sister." Hours passed. Evelyn Prescott had been quiet since the earlier altercation. She was reclined now, sipping wine, her husband flipping through business briefs beside her. Occasionally, they shared quiet whispers and sideways glances. Ariel didn't care. Amara watched them once or twice, but then closed her eyes and leaned back, a few rows behind. A man in his 60s watched the twins with increasing interest. He was dressed plainly navy polo, gray sweater over his lap, but his face carried authority. He had noticed everything: the forced deference, the polite racism masked in luxury, the way the crew looked away. He opened his laptop. An article appeared: Lumen Equity Group welcomes next-gen innovators to World Tech Horizon. He scrolled. There, at the bottom of the press release, were two photos: Ariel and Amara Bennett. Their startup had been selected as one of only 12 companies worldwide to pitch a civic finance AI platform to government regulators and global investors. The man smiled to himself. He closed the laptop and pressed the button on his armrest. A steward appeared. "Can you have the pilot connect me to the ground team at Lumen?" the man asked. The steward blinked. "Sir, tell Captain Halverson. This is Charles D. Kinley. He'll know what to do." The steward nodded quickly and rushed to the cockpit. Kinley sat back, hands folded over his lap, gaze resting on the sisters. They had no idea who he was. That was good. 10 minutes later, up front, Captain Halverson received the message and his brow furrowed. "You're certain?" "Yes, sir. That's him. Charles D. Kinley, Executive Chair of Lumen Equity Group." The captain nodded slowly and looked back through the glass at the cabin. The Bennett sisters were seated quietly, composed, unbothered on the surface, but something was brewing. He could feel it. He picked up the in-flight phone. "Linda, can you come to the flight deck?" Linda appeared a few seconds later. The captain leaned in. "I just received word from the ground. The gentleman in seat 2C is Chairman Kinley." Linda's face paled. I didn't realize." "More importantly," Halverson continued, "the young women in 1A and 1B, Ariel and Amara Bennett, they're the founders of Pennywise Tech, our primary innovation investment this cycle." Linda swallowed hard. "I need you to handle this discreetly. I want a statement prepared for all passengers and a formal apology issued by landing." Linda nodded. "Of course, Captain." But as she turned to leave, the intercom system suddenly buzzed, then clicked open without anyone pressing a button. A voice came through. "Passengers of Altura Flight 917. This is Charles Kinley." The cabin fell into shocked silence. "I'm speaking not as a traveler, but as the chair of the board that funds this aircraft, its crew, and the systems that make this experience possible. Moments ago, I witnessed an incident that disturbed me deeply, not just for its prejudice, but for the quiet complicity that followed. Evelyn Prescott sat upright in her seat. Her husband's mouth hung slightly open. Kinley's voice continued, even, powerful. I watched two young women, Ariel and Amara Bennett, be asked to move from their assigned first-class seats to accommodate a white passenger who claimed discomfort at their presence. No rule was violated. No conduct was out of place. They were simply asked to surrender space for the comfort of another. No one breathed. And that, he said, is what systemic bias looks like. Not in policy, but in permission, in expectation, in the belief that silence will keep everyone comfortable. Ariel looked at Amara. Her eyes were wide. So, effective immediately. I'm issuing a policy directive to Altura Skies. Any staff member who enforces, permits, or tolerates racial bias, explicit or implicit, in the treatment of passengers will be subject to immediate review, public disclosure, and possible termination. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Furthermore, the flight attendant who initially approached the Bennett sisters will be suspended pending full investigation, as will the passenger who requested the switch. Evelyn let out a shocked sound, somewhere between a cough and a scoff. And to Ariel and Amara, you do not have to accept apology as justice. But I hope this is a beginning. I look forward to hearing you speak in Geneva. The line went dead, silence. Then a quiet, stunned applause from somewhere in coach. Then another, then more. Ariel sat frozen. Amara gripped her hand tightly. They did not cry. They did not smile. They just looked forward. At the sky beyond the clouds. At what was finally beginning to shift. The air in the cabin was thin, not because of the altitude, but because of what was now left unspoken. After the incident with Evelyn Prescott and the forced seat switch, Ariel had retreated into a silence that even Amara couldn't penetrate. The moment the world shifted around them when Amara finally refused to be treated as disposable, Ariel knew things could never go back to how they were. Her calm had always been a mask, but now it was breaking. Captain Ray Halverson made no announcement. The seatbelt sign was still on, yet everything had changed. In row 3C, Evelyn sipped her wine. She didn't look toward the back, but her smug smile remained. Behind her, passengers whispered. A man in a blazer typed furiously on his laptop, and a middle-aged woman across the aisle was discreetly filming, but none of them had stepped in. No one had said, "This is wrong." Ariel sat with her hand over her mouth, watching Amara stare out the window. Her sister didn't move. The reflection in the glass showed a young woman holding back fire, holding back tears. The tension in her jaw, the defiance in her silence, it tore at Ariel's heart. I should have said something, she thought, but saying something always came with a cost. She remembered their father's words. Nathaniel Bennett, CEO of Lumen Equity Group, taught them early that silence was safety. When you were the only black person in the room, your words were magnified, dissected, often weaponized. So, Ariel had built her life around being inoffensive, invisible when needed. She thought it protected her. But today, invisibility became the insult. Her fingers clenched her coat. The luxury cashmere blend now felt like a trap, a costume. What good was success if you still had to justify your existence at 38,000 feet across the aisle? Linda Marks, the chief flight attendant, stood rigid near the galley. She had said nothing since the incident. Her hands nervously folded a napkin over and over again. But Ariel noticed how Linda glanced over at Evelyn now and then, with something close to guilt, or maybe fear. Evelyn's husband, Richard Prescott, was a senior partner at Prescott and Faulkner LLP, a legal firm that had long-standing ties to Altura Skies. Ariel had researched them years ago when working on a failed equity reform proposal. Back then, she didn't have the leverage. Now, she wasn't sure leverage even mattered. Amara finally turned from the window. "I'm done playing quiet," she said softly, just to Ariel. The calm in her voice startled Ariel more than if she had shouted. "What are you thinking?" Ariel asked, almost afraid to hear it. Amara didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She typed something, then paused, hovering her thumb over the screen. "Are you tweeting that?" Ariel asked. "No," Amara said. "I'm sending it to Dad." Ariel froze. Nathaniel had been silent ever since they told him about the opportunity to speak at the World Tech Horizon Conference. He respected their independence, but he was still a man who believed timing was everything. His presence on the Altura Skies board was not public knowledge. If Amara sent the video of what happened, "You're thinking of pulling him into this," Ariel whispered. "He needs to see. He always told us to stand in truth." Remember, Ariel bit her lip. She remembered. She also remembered the fallout the last time Nathaniel got involved in a corporate scandal. It wasn't just boardrooms that burned. Reputations, careers, relationships, they all became collateral damage. "You think he'll respond?" Ariel asked. "He will," Amara said. "Not because we're his daughters, because this is his brand, too. And right now, Altura Skies is violating everything he built his legacy on." Ariel nodded, slowly. "Then do it." Amara hit send, a few rows ahead. Linda Marks moved toward them. She paused awkwardly beside their row, glancing down. "Ms. Bennett," she said to Ariel, "may I speak with you both?" "In private." "Why now?" Amara asked. "Please," Linda said. Her voice trembled. I should have stopped it earlier." I froze. "But I've documented everything in the incident report." "You think that changes what Evelyn did?" Amara asked, voice low. "No, but I think you deserve an apology. From the airline." "From me?" Ariel stood. Amara hesitated, then followed. They walked toward the galley. Linda leaned in. "I saw what she did. I heard the slur under her breath. I didn't speak up because I thought I'd be punished for going against a platinum-tier passenger. But I realize now, silence makes me complicit." Ariel searched her face. The fear was real. The regret, maybe too. But apologies without accountability were just noise. "What do you want us to do?" Ariel asked. Linda hesitated. "There's a formal review process. If you file a complaint, I'll support it, and I'll name names, even if it risks my job." Ariel looked at Amara, then back. "You'll put that in writing?" "Yes." "Then we'll consider it," Ariel said. They returned to their seats. Ariel felt the cabin watching. She wanted to disappear, but not from shame, from exhaustion. Being black and brilliant was never enough. There was always another test. Minutes passed. A ping sounded, then another, then a third. Phones buzzed across the cabin. "What's going on?" Amara whispered. Ariel checked her phone. "Breaking Altura Skies under fire after racial discrimination incident. On board flight 917 viral video shows VIP black passengers moved for white client." The video Amara sent had already gone viral. But what shocked Ariel more was the name in the byline. Statement released by Lumen Equity Group CEO Dr. Nathaniel Bennett. If this is the standard Altura supports, we will reconsider our 130-meter investment. The cabin stirred. Even Evelyn turned around. Her eyes searched, confused. Her confidence waned. Linda stepped forward again, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice shaking, "there's been a personnel change request from headquarters. As of this moment, our service crew will comply with immediate protocol for VIP escalation." She walked to Evelyn's seat. "Ms. Prescott, please gather your belongings." "Excuse me," Evelyn hissed. "You're being reseated. This is not optional." Evelyn stood, protesting, demanding to see a supervisor. But it was too late. Passengers had started filming again. Her voice, once commanding, now sounded shrill, desperate. She passed Ariel and Amara without looking at them. Amara exhaled. Her shoulders dropped. Ariel reached for her sister's hand. "That was you," she whispered. "That was us," Amara corrected, and the silence finally broke. The cabin had grown quieter after Evelyn was escorted out. The hush that followed felt unnatural, as though even the air had stilled, holding its breath. Ariel sat frozen in her seat, her fingers loosely clasped around a water bottle she hadn't touched. Amara, sitting beside her, leaned forward slightly, still watching the front of the cabin where Evelyn had disappeared just moments before. There was no applause, no vindication, just the soft hum of jet engines and the weight of what had just happened pressing on everyone like invisible fog. Captain Halverson hadn't made another announcement. Perhaps he was conferring with legal or ground control. Perhaps he was simply trying to understand what had just unraveled on his flight. But for Ariel and Amara, the storm hadn't passed, not yet. Ariel turned to her sister slowly. "Did that feel real to you?" Amara exhaled. "No. I keep waiting for someone to tell us to move, or for her to come back with some legal stunt. But it happened. People saw it. They heard her." Linda Marks, the lead attendant, returned to their row quietly. There was no tray, no clipboard, no show of control, just tired eyes behind her glasses and a hesitant kindness that hadn't been there earlier. "I just wanted to say," she began. "I heard everything, and I'm sorry for my part in it. I should have listened better, been braver." Amara glanced at Ariel, then back at Linda. "Why didn't you?" Linda sat on the edge of the armrest near their aisle. "Sometimes we forget that silence has consequences. I thought I was protecting the flight from a disturbance, but I wasn't protecting you, and that's on me." Ariel nodded slowly. She didn't absolve Linda with words. Not yet, but she appreciated the honesty. Linda stood again, then added quietly, "They're calling Geneva and Altura's legal team. You'll be met by people when we land. I don't know what comes next, but I hope it brings some kind of justice." As she walked away, Amara said under her breath, "We bring our own justice." Ariel didn't answer. She was thinking too hard, replaying every word, every camera angle she'd glimpsed on nearby phones, the looks on passengers' faces, the shifts in power and tone. How quickly the moment flipped when Evelyn spoke without knowing she was being heard. But now, what? The question echoed in her head, bouncing between rage and fatigue. She remembered something their father used to say when they were younger: "You don't have to fight every battle with fire. Sometimes truth burns brighter than any match you can light." Ariel reached down and pulled her laptop bag onto her lap. "You bringing out the heat already," Amara smirked. "I'm checking the ground response. I bet this is already trending." And it was. The moment Evelyn's outburst was captured had already been clipped, edited, and shared by at least a dozen passengers. The caption was simple black twins told to move for VIP. VIP didn't know they were Bennett's daughters. Underneath were thousands of comments, most in support, some shocked, some angry at the system. A few defending Evelyn, suggesting maybe she was confused. Ariel didn't waste energy on those. The momentum was shifting, but truth needed guiding. She was good at that. "Start drafting a statement," she told Amara, "not as victims, as founders, as witnesses, as women." Amara's smile was tight but proud. "We're not going to wait for Altura to spin it. No, we frame it ourselves. We tell people what happened. We remind them why Pennywise exists in the first place. To build systems that see people clearly, that don't let bias become policy." A few rows behind them, someone tapped the back of their seat. Ariel turned to see an older woman, her hand trembling slightly. "I just wanted to say," the woman whispered, "you two held yourselves with so much grace. My granddaughter is mixed. I hope when she grows up, she's as strong as you." Ariel's eyes welled. She nodded, unable to speak. Amara reached back and gave the woman's hand a gentle squeeze. They were still mid-Atlantic. Time was stretching strangely, a thick ribbon of air and unspoken thoughts. More passengers passed them quiet glances. Some mouthed thank you. Others simply offered nods of respect. The silence had turned, becoming not complicit but reverent, respectful, perhaps even protective. About 40 minutes from descent, Linda returned. This time, her voice was firmer, but her face still carried the weight of reflection. "There's a team from Lumen waiting at Geneva. Your father's assistant sent instructions. You're to be escorted directly from the jetway to the conference venue by private vehicle. Also, the board of Altura Skies has issued a statement." She handed them a printed copy. Ariel read it first, lips tightening. "Altura Skies is committed to equity, dignity, and respect for all passengers. We regret the incident aboard Flight 917 involving passengers Ariel and Amara Bennett. The behavior exhibited was inconsistent with our values and protocols. Immediate internal review and restructuring are underway. Evelyn Prescott's account has been permanently suspended pending investigation." Amara snorted. So neat and tidy. "Now they remember our names. It's not about their words," Ariel said. "It's about what we say next." Amara nodded. "Then let's make it count." The descent into Geneva was smooth. Ariel had flown there a dozen times, but never like this. Never carrying so much public weight. Never feeling the quiet pull of expectation from an entire plane. As they taxied, cameras clicked again. Someone filmed them as they stood, straightened their jackets, lifted their carry-ons. Ariel turned to the window. In the distance, she could already see two black sedans waiting near the jetway. Amara whispered, "You ready?" Ariel didn't answer immediately. Her mind was caught in flashes of Evelyn's voice calling her the help, of Linda's eyes shifting, hesitating, of their mother's hands braiding their hair before church, of their father telling them to never let anyone define their value, and now here they were, on the world stage, uninvited, but unavoidable. She turned back to her sister, voice steady. "We were born ready." As the cabin door opened and the first gust of cool Geneva air swept in, the Bennett twins stepped forward taller than before, rooted, unshaken. It was no longer just about what had happened. It was about what came next. For a moment, the cabin fell into a silence so complete it felt unnatural. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was the brittle hush that falls over a room just before something breaks or explodes. Owen could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on him, on the twins, on the trembling flight attendant now backed into a corner near the galley, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. And beyond that silence, he sensed the edge of something bigger, publicness, the watching world. He'd caught it too many times in headlines, in conference rooms, and hushed dinner tables. But this was not business. This was personal. He turned to face Elijah and Eden. They sat frozen, wide-eyed, still clinging to the seat they had been forced into. Elijah's fingers were interlaced tightly with Eden's. She had stopped crying, but her jaw was trembling. It was the kind of expression Owen had seen in children too many times too early, an encounter with humiliation. Too soon, a burden of explaining themselves. "Would you both like to return to your seats?" Owen's voice was low, steady. Elijah nodded slowly, but Eden's hand remained glued to the armrest. Owen crouched beside her. "You're safe now." "I promise," he said gently. "No one's going to make you move again." Eden looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. Why did she hate us? Owen's chest constricted. He took a slow breath before answering. "She doesn't know you," he said, "and sometimes people fear or resent what they don't understand. That doesn't mean it's your fault." She stared at him for a moment, then gave a faint nod. Owen stood and extended his hand. She took it. Elijah followed, and together they returned to their original seats. As they sat down, a man in business class began to clap, then another joined, then another. Within seconds, the entire front half of the plane was applauding slow, deliberate, echoing with something deeper than mere approval. It was solidarity, and it was overdue, but it didn't solve everything. The real fracture had only just begun to show. Captain Mendez approached from the cockpit, his face neutral but tense. "Mr. Prescott, may I speak with you in the galley?" Owen followed without a word. Inside the narrow corridor, the captain leaned in slightly. "We're 20 minutes from descent," he said. "There's chatter. Social media's already lighting up. A passenger filmed the whole incident and uploaded it. I assumed as much." Owen replied, "Corporate's requesting a full incident report. They're concerned." Owen raised an eyebrow. Concerned about what? That the truth came out too fast for them to spin it. The captain didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. "We'll land in San Francisco shortly," he said. "There will be press. I just thought you should be prepared." Owen nodded slowly, then added, "Make sure the children get off first. Unbothered, unphotographed." "I'll arrange it," the captain said, back at his seat. Owen sat in silence. He looked at the screen in front of him, but he wasn't watching. His mind had gone elsewhere backwards, mostly back to the boy who had once watched his father be humiliated for the color of his skin in a hotel lobby. Back to the teenager who had been mistaken for a valet at a tech gala because of his suit and the way he held himself. He thought he had moved beyond that, built walls with success, money, presence, but none of that had changed the reflex in others' eyes. It didn't change how two young black children could still be publicly shamed for simply sitting where their tickets said they belonged. Owen closed his eyes. Across the aisle, Mia stirred. She had been silent throughout most of the ordeal, watching with quiet, calculating eyes. Now she leaned toward him. "You didn't flinch," she said. Owen looked at her. "You didn't either," he replied. She smiled, though it was a tired smile. "I used to think keeping quiet kept me safe," she said. "But I think silence is what lets things like this fester." Owen nodded. "When we land, I want you and the kids in the press room with me." Her eyes widened. "You sure they deserve to be seen, and you deserve to be heard," as the seatbelt sign dinged and the wheels prepared to descend. Owen reached for his phone. He opened the Notes app and began to type not a press statement, but something truer. A promise, a reckoning, a blueprint. The wheels touched down. As the plane rolled to a stop, Captain Mendez stood and made a rare cabin-wide announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the crew, I'd like to thank you for your patience today. Before we disembark, we ask for your cooperation in allowing our first-class guests, Mr. Owen Prescott and the Evans family, to exit first." The applause returned, but this time it was gentler. Not a spectacle, a gesture, down the jet bridge. Owen walked beside Elijah and Eden, with Mia close behind. The sunlight filtering into the terminal felt surreal after the storm they had endured inside that cabin. They were met by a team of airport staff. A woman with a headset and clipboard nodded quickly. "The press is already assembled at the media gate, local and national. We tried to minimize, but—" Owen raised a hand. "It's all right. We're not hiding." They were escorted through a side corridor. The doors opened, and flashbulbs fired like lightning. But this time, the storm did not shake them. Owen stepped to the podium. He looked at the crowd of reporters, microphones, and outstretched phones. He didn't speak from a script. He didn't read from his phone. He spoke from the only place that mattered now. "I am Owen Prescott," he said. "You may know me as the founder of Skybridge Ventures, but today I'm here as something more important to witness. A father, a man who is tired of systems that pretend equity exists when it does not." He paused. Today, 2 children were asked to give up their rightful seats in first class, not because of an error, not because of a flight change, but because of the color of their skin. The room held its breath. They were humiliated, questioned, made to feel unworthy of space they had earned. And the only reason this came to light is because someone was watching, someone documented. But I ask you, what happens when no one sees? He looked over at Elijah and Eden. We talk about progress, about diversity, about inclusion. But these are not words to decorate company mission statements. They are principles. And today, they were violated. Owen's voice grew quieter, not weaker, just deeper. "I will not let this go quietly. Not because I'm angry, but because I believe in better. For them. For all of us." He stepped aside. Mia walked up slowly, her voice trembling but clear. "My name is Mia Evans. I'm their guardian. And I saw what happened with my own eyes. I stayed quiet for too long in my life, hoping it would keep me safe. But silence is not safety. Speaking up is—" She stepped down. The room erupted, not with questions, but with a stunned kind of awe. This wasn't scandal. This was a mirror. And everyone had just been forced to look. There was a silence on Flight 8280 that felt almost holy. It came after the seatbelt signs blinked off and the plane steadied itself in the night air over Colorado. But the calm had little to do with altitude. It was the silence of people holding their breath. Passengers looked away. Others leaned in. Phones lit up slowly as someone had started recording again. And, at the center of it all, Olivia and Owen sat motionless in their original seats, quiet, not ashamed, just waiting. Like the calm before a storm knew exactly when to arrive. And it did. It was Colleen, the flight supervisor, who returned. Her face was taut, her clipboard was gone, and she was followed by two men, one in a suit, one in a silver pin reading FAA Inspector. Emmett's eyes met Olivia's. Something passed between them. He had heard of this move. It was rare, but not without precedent. "Good evening," the man in the suit began as he turned toward the front. He was tall, graying, his tie clipped with the airline's insignia. "My name is Darren Wexley, Director of Flight Operations for Airverse Airlines." There were murmurs now, the kind that ripple like water in a glass. He nodded toward the man beside him. "This is Mr. Trent Harlow, Senior Compliance Auditor with the FAA. We were contacted 35 minutes ago by your onboard security network. That contact originated not from crew protocol. It was transmitted through an embedded alert coming from one of the emergency override bracelets." His eyes paused on Emmett. The cabin stilled. "We understand a decision was made to request that two young passengers relinquish their assigned first-class seats in favor of an unregistered passenger. She paid for a seat. Flight attendant." Shelley snapped, her voice brittle. "No," Trent Harlow replied, flipping through a tablet. "According to our manifest, Seat 2C was unassigned, and this gentleman here," he nodded toward Emmett, "is the verified sponsor of passengers in 2A and 2B. Their boarding passes were issued and scanned in full compliance with FAA booking and identification protocols." Colleen shifted beside them, color draining from her cheeks. "And yet," Trent continued, "the cabin crew requested a swap based on what appears to be perceived entitlement by another passenger." He turned now, slowly, toward Mrs. Pennington. The woman had gone pale. She clutched her shawl like a curtain. "Mrs. Pennington," Darren said gently, "do you recall demanding a seat that was not yours?" I simply assumed." "You assumed," Darren repeated, "that two black children should not have been seated ahead of you. There it was, the truth, naked and without excuse. It hit the cabin like a thunderclap. A few passengers gasped. Others looked down in shame. A man in row 5 exhaled loudly. Even some who had stayed quiet began to whisper angrily now. "That's not what I meant," Mrs. Pennington snapped, but her voice cracked. "It's what you acted on," Darren replied, "which is what we hold accountable." Olivia's fingers clutched the edge of her tray. Emmett placed his hand lightly over hers. It was not a rescue. It was grounding, a gesture that said, "You're not alone. You never were." Mr. Harlow turned toward the flight crew. Shelley Monroe, Colleen Dash, and First Officer Pierce, effective immediately. You are suspended from flight duties pending full investigation. You may step to the galley now. Colleen began to protest, but Darren raised a hand. "It's done." And just like that, the cabin began to breathe again. Not because justice was finished, but because someone had finally acknowledged that it had been denied. Owen looked at his sister. "Did we do something wrong?" "No," Olivia said softly. "We did something right, and they didn't expect us to." She didn't cry, but Emmett saw something in her face that nearly broke him. That look a child gives when they've had to grow up in 5 minutes flat. He leaned in, his voice low. "You two changed the air in this plane tonight." Owen smiled. "How? By making people see what they were pretending not to. That matters." The captain's voice came on over the intercom a few moments later. He was clear, calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We apologize for the disruption earlier in the flight. We've addressed it with the highest level of urgency. Please know this aircraft is under direct supervision of the FAA for the remainder of the route. We are proud to have passengers aboard who uphold the dignity and rights of every person on this aircraft. Thank you." A wave of applause followed. Not everyone clapped, but enough did. Enough to let Olivia and Owen know the silence was broken. Enough to let Emmett know that sometimes resistance begins not with shouting, but with sitting still. Later, while the rest of the plane slept or scrolled or watched clouds pass outside tiny windows, Emmett opened his phone. The airline had already issued a statement. It was brief but honest. "We are aware of an incident aboard Flight 8280. The situation was handled swiftly and transparently by our operations and ethics teams in partnership with the FAA. We reiterate that our first-class cabins are not determined by race, assumptions, or preference. Every child, regardless of appearance, deserves to feel safe in their seat. More to come." Emmett exhaled. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he felt something he hadn't let himself feel in too long. Hope. The plane dipped slightly, beginning its descent somewhere below. Denver sprawled out like a promise waiting to be kept. Olivia and Owen had dozed off now, heads tilted, their faces soft in sleep. He reached for the in-flight blanket and covered them both. Not because they were fragile, but because they were finally safe. And maybe, just maybe, the world was learning that was worth protecting. The silence in Cabin A was unnerving. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet that lulled people to sleep on red-eye flights. This was the kind of silence that followed a thunderclap, when everyone was still processing what they'd just heard and seen. Mia sat back in her seat, her eyes blinking away a stubborn tear as she stared forward. Her jaw set. Beside her, Lennox was unusually still. The phone call had ended 5 minutes ago, and yet the words of Chief Diversity Counsel Felicia Raines still hung in the air like static. Effective immediately. All involved crew members are suspended. Full investigation underway. Thank you for speaking up. There had been a subtle shift in air pressure, or maybe just in perspective. Around them, passengers began murmuring not loudly, but with a kind of reverent curiosity. Dylan, the flight supervisor who had first barked at the twins, was gone. Escorted off the plane by federal marshals. So was Lara, the purser who'd called Mia entitled and accused Lennox of aggression. No dramatic protests, just stunned faces and a quiet retreat. In the silence that followed, the captain himself emerged from the cockpit. He wasn't young. Gray-flecked hair, weathered face, a crease in his brow that looked like it came from real experience, not the fake kind that gets worn like a mask. "I'm Captain Julian Meyer," he said, his voice steady, neither apologetic nor defensive. "And I just want to say, I'm sorry." Mia blinked, She wasn't used to men in uniforms offering those words with no preamble or qualification. "I've been flying for 32 years, the captain continued, "and I've seen the industry shift in many ways, some good, some not. But what happened to you both today, how you were spoken to, judged, diminished, it's not something I'll ignore. Not under my watch." He didn't linger. He nodded once to the row, then turned and walked back to the cockpit. It was a small gesture, but small gestures are often what carve canyons. Lennox exhaled. His body had been braced for so long. He hadn't realized how tightly he'd been gripping the seatbelt until the release made his hand cramp. He turned to Mia. "You all right?" he asked, his voice a soft gravel. Mia nodded slowly. "Just tired. Not the kind of tired you can fix with sleep." They fell into silence again, but this time it was different. It was the quiet of a turning page. Across the aisle, someone passed them a note on hotel stationery. A woman in her 70s, dressed in a pale blue cardigan, smiled softly as Mia unfolded it. In shaky handwriting it said, "You showed them grace. The world needs more like you." Mia held the note for a long time before folding it and placing it gently into the front pocket of her backpack. "We didn't even try to make a statement," she whispered. Lennox tilted his head, looking out at the clouds. But sometimes the truth makes one on its own. The plane began its descent into Charlotte. Announcements resumed, tray tables were checked, but in that cabin, nothing felt routine. The landing was smooth, but the minute the plane touched down, Mia's phone lit up like a fireworks display. Texts, emails, missed calls, Twitter notifications spiraling upward. The story had spread, faster than either of them expected. Someone had uploaded a video, probably the woman from row 8. It captured Dylan's voice as he asked the twins to give up their seats. It captured Lennox's calm refusal. Mia's quiet question, "Would you have asked us that if we weren't black?" And then the phone call. The reaction of the passengers. The escorting off of crew. The title of the video, "Black Twins." Stand their ground and the first-class airline responds immediately. A trending hashtag was born by the time they reached the gate. First-class Respect airport staff were waiting, but not with more confrontation. They escorted the twins and their mother, Camilla, who had watched it unfold from 3 rows back, into a private lounge. Warm drinks. Apologies. A media rep, already flustered, trying to offer platitudes and scripted statements. Mia wasn't interested in any of it. She looked at her mother, Camilla, fierce and dignified even with her medical scarf slightly slipping, took her daughter's hand. "You did right," she said softly. "Sometimes doing right doesn't come with applause, but that doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing." By evening, the airline's official statement had been posted across major media platforms. They acknowledged the incident, promised sweeping policy reviews, diversity recertification for crew members, structural training, independent review board. But what stood out wasn't the corporate jargon, it was the sentence at the end. "We thank Mia and Lennox Taylor for modeling the kind of dignity and strength we hope to reflect better in our service." The family stayed overnight in Charlotte. A suite was comped, flowers were delivered. None of it felt like compensation, but it gave them space to breathe. Later that night, Mia scrolled through the comments beneath the viral video. Among the noise were hundreds of stories. "This happened to my father last year. No one filmed it. I used to work airline crew. I saw this too often." Mia's question broke me. It was all in her voice, calm but clear. That's what courage looks like. She read until her eyes blurred. Then she turned off the phone and walked out to the hotel balcony. The night was quiet. Planes still ascended and landed, blinking across the sky like blinking stars. Lennox joined her. No words, just the rhythm of shared breath and the creak of metal chairs. What now, he finally asked. I don't know, she said. We didn't ask to be anyone's symbol. No, Lennox agreed, but maybe we were someone's reminder. She turned to look at him, of what that dignity doesn't need permission. He let the silence stretch, then added that sometimes you can just say no, and it matters. Below them, traffic moved, unbothered. Above them, a plane cut a line through the night, neither up nor down, just in motion, like them, like this story, like the world. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't fight back with fists. They fought back with presence, with poise, with truth. When Mia and Lennox Taylor stood their ground in the first-class cabin, they didn't just defend their seats, they challenged a system that too often expects silence from those it mistreats. In doing so, they reminded us that discrimination doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, smiles, and hands you a cup of coffee with a side of bias. But dignity never needs to shout. In the end, policy changed. Crew members were held accountable. But most importantly, a generation saw two black teenagers stay seated calm, certain, and unshaken because they knew they belonged. This story is for every person who's ever been told they didn't fit the image, for every quiet fighter who chooses grace over rage, and for everyone who believes the sky should be safe for all of us. What would you have done in seat 2A if this story moved you? Please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more real stories that challenge injustice and uplift the human spirit. We'll see you in the next one.